Hey, Rebel Bankers, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris Noggle, and I've got an unbelievable guest for you today. Mark Ainley is an investor, but sort of a rock star is what I would say. So he's done over 450 rehabs. And before we got started with this, we were chatting a little bit, and I said, how do you have any hair left? Like, that's insane. Not only that, he manages 900 properties. There you go. He had a show he featured on CNBC's The Deed. I mean, on and on and on. He's got so much that we could talk about today. And here he is, ready to tell his story, tell you about his journey, how he overcame the obstacles that so many of us face in this real estate world. But before we get started with Mark and his journey, I want to talk about your journey really quick. You know, I always do this show and we always talk about money. That's always the biggest barrier to success. People are always caught up with money. I don't have money. When I get money, it's always some excuse. It's your crutch. Money is not your crutch. Money shouldn't be your excuse. And we're here to tell you that money is simply in your mind. It is one of the easiest things to this business. If you want to be in real estate or you're in real estate struggling with the money part, all you need to do is a few things different and learn a little bit more, because honestly, that's going to be what catapults your business. And the way to get started with that is grab a copy of my book, The Private Money Guide. Check us out online or check out my website at chrisnoggle.com for all the future events that we've got going on to get you started on your journey to becoming a Rebel Banker. But now let's jump into this. Mark, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm so excited to hear your story. And you know, what I want to do is let's start with a little bit about kind of where your business is today. And then after that, let's jump back in time and go back to the humble beginnings of how you started this, because there's one thing I'm going to bring up. We're going to talk about that first deal and how you did it. That's awesome. So Mark, let's hear it.
Well, Chris, that was way too, as me trying to be humble, way too good of an introduction for me. I don't think I deserve that. But I just want to say before we get going here that I have been cyber stalking you and listening to your podcast and catching up. And the information and the wealth of information that you're providing out there is huge for the beginner. And even, I've learned a bunch of stuff. So even people that have experience, I've picked up some good stuff. So you are doing an awesome thing for the real estate investor out there, from beginning to professional. So nice job.
Thank you so much for that, Mark. I appreciate it.
Today we sit I'm from Chicago, and we have a management company. We manage about 900 doors, residential. We specialize in the 1 to 4. Of those 900 doors, 110 of them are commercial, mostly industrial. The small multi-unit industrial buildings, we like that. No domestic violence issues with commercial properties. So we're a big fan on that. We're always trying to go after more of those deals. But we are doing, our flipping, and, we've done a lot more buy and sell turnkey. So that we kind of stumbled into that on accident. But we're doing, last year we only did about 23, 24 deals. And this year we're probably about to do the same. And it's not necessarily that we don't want to, or we don't think the money's there. We just haven't put the resources to find the deals. Finding the deals is a heck of a lot harder because we're competing against a whole nother level of people these days. So we slowed down. Now we focus a little more on the property management. We have, for some reason, a very sick passion for property management. I tell people,
Mark, it is sick. It is a sick passion.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know. I like it. And I think one of the things we like so much, me and my two partners, is the industry is evolving right now. I mean, up until 10 years ago, it was really, you'll hear people explain it as, not me, as like a failed real estate agent that collects rents on the side was handling property management. And it's becoming its own sector. It's becoming respectable, and with technology and the different efficiencies, it's becoming scalable. So some of the things we do is technology-based, and we've been able to scale for that reason. So it's really exciting to us. So we put a lot more resources in that of late.
Awesome. And, the one thing you didn't mention, and, I'm kind of the same way, I guess the humble part of us is tell them about the fact that you were on a TV show on CNBC. I mean, come on, you sort of left that out, bud.
Yeah, it's off my bucket list. I'll tell you that. You know more than anybody how tough that is. But so we got the opportunity to be on a TV show. Initially, it started off as the funny, if anyone's seen the show, the storyline's along. We bought properties at the judicial sale off the court steps. Some people look at it that way. And we bought the wrong property. We went and did our due diligence on a property, and we ended up buying the one across the street.
Whoops.
Lo and behold, it ultimately was a better deal. But in the talks with the producers, they found it to be a comical scenario to put a reality show around. So we ran with it. And, the story ultimately turned into our growing pains, not so much our rehab or our flipping capability. So it was kind of cool. It kind of made us look good in the sense of we know what we're doing on how to rehab a house. But hey, these guys are busting their hump, and they're probably doing some of the wrong things and trying to scale a business. And so it was an awesome experience in that sense.
That's funny, actually. Hey, we did the research on this house, and we bought the one across the street. Whoops, love it. That would be entertaining. I gotta check that out for sure. So let's do this. Let's take a moment and go back to your first few deals, because I bring a lot of big players just like yourself on this podcast, and it's always great. You got 900 properties you manage. You did 450. You had a TV show. Like, that's awesome. But how did you get there? It's always about the journey. And, I found when I first started in real estate, I would look at, the TV show stars, and I'd hold them up on a pedestal. But then when I started peeling the onion and learning like how they got there, I started learning that they struggled just like I did. They had the same problems just like I did. And that's what I like to talk about on the show. I like to talk about those first few deals, how you funded it, what struggles you had. So tell us about your first 1 or 5 deals, whatever you'd like.
Well, we're all 15-year overnight successes, is how I like to say it. Took me 15 years to be overnight success. But so I stumbled into real estate just kind of in my entrepreneurial mindset. I knew from a young age, I grew up on the other side of the tracks, I guess is the saying. And I always saw what other people had. And now that I'm older, it's not necessarily that now that I do have the opportunity to have things, and I do have things, I really don't care about those things. I always wanted the opportunity to have those things, the options. If anything, some of our successes brought us is just nice to have the option to be able to do things. But going back, even to late high school, the college years, I was trying to find what I wanted to do. And, me and who's one of my current partners still, we were messing around doing anything from we had a couple ice cream trucks. We were doing some vending machines. We were selling fake purses at salons on the weekends. I mean, whatever it took, I was hustling to do it. And just by accident, I kind of stumbled across the first real estate investment that I've had. Now, I bought my personal residence, and I bought that for my dad. And I went the whole FHA route, and I had a couple bucks in my savings. And I did that. And it was really buying my personal residence and having what they call today house hacking, having a couple of my buddies rent the rooms out, is what made me realize, wow, this can pay down my mortgage, and I'm living for free, and I still have my own place. I'm not living with my parents. So that was my kind of 21-year-old mindset that said, wow, real estate's kind of, I see what this is all about. And, back then they didn't have internet, period. And they didn't have as much online, or they didn't have, the books weren't out there like they are today. So my real estate backing was reading Trump books, which really just glorified the idea of real estate. Didn't really get into specifics, but it just kind of glorified it. So a couple years, about a year after I bought my personal residence, it might not have been that long, I stumbled across an opportunity to buy a condo conversion. Basically in Chicago, they're doing a bunch of apartments to convert to condos. And I bought that, and I put it under contract, and all of a sudden I said, damn, I have to come up with the down payment. And the down payment was only like 5%. And so early on in my career, I did a lot of things in reverse. It's, here's the opportunity, I'll take it. Then I had to figure it out. So it didn't serve me wrong, but it always put me under the gun to go figure things out. And on that first deal, though, it worked out good in the sense of I got my paycheck the next day. I was working a salary job at that point, and it had my 401k balance on it. And I'm like, man, it hit me. I heard somebody in the background one time say, hey, yeah, I took a loan against my 401k. And lo and behold, ran over to HR at that moment, and they they gave me the paperwork to fill out, and I borrowed that first down payment from my 401k. So
I love it. That's exactly how I did my first flip in 2006. So
nice.
That and a loan from my whole life policy. That's the way I did it.
So if you want one more quick story on that, my
Please.
second property, I thought, I'm like, this is perfect. I'll keep borrowing from my 401k. And I knew I had the money in there. So I put my second property under contract, ran over to HR, filled out the paperwork, and I got denied. I guess that, you know more of this than me, but you only can borrow so much a percentage of what you have in there. Yeah. So they denied me. So all of a sudden I had this property. I had to come up with like $7,000 in like 3 days, like to hold the property. So I went and found I had the credit cards, and I got the interest free for 12 months off of 2 credit cards. So I had 35 and 35, and that's how I financed the down payment for my second property, was interest free credit card debt, I guess.
So that, you know what they say, that's whatever it takes to get it done. That's what you did. They denied me over here. Okay, fine. I'll go over here. That was great. And during these first couple flips, like, what was it like? I mean, did you do your own work? Were you hiring it out? I mean, what was the whole experience like on those first couple?
Well, my first flip, I learned the crash course in property management. And that's where I swore off to never manage a property again. But, I put the first sad story, I put an ad in the paper, took the first sad story, ultimately had to file for eviction, did the modern day cash for keys on a handshake with her even. And she and I got the place back, and I sold it, and I just made some good money. So that one was very cosmetic. We put new carpet and paint, and it was very simple and just right place, right time. Second one, we made good money on the first one, which is what motivated me to really jump in and got my real estate license and all that, and become really all in real estate. But second one, we did the rehab, and the second, third, fourth one, I did a lot of the work myself. And I'm not skillful at all. Like, so that was, everything took a lot longer. I ended up ultimately electrocuting one of my partner's best friends because I thought, because my dad was an electrician, that I knew how to wire all these outlets, and that's a different story. But, we did a lot of work. We put a lot of the sweat equity in early on in those early flips. The second one, I couldn't sell it for the price I wanted to, so we ended up renting it out, and ended up selling a handful of years later. But we did a handful of those in the beginning, just kind of doing it ourselves before the market crashed.
Oh, that's awesome. So that was your first couple, and we could talk a little bit about where you're at today. So you went from those couple up to doing 450. So let's just spend a moment talking about that. I mean, here's a first couple, this one didn't go so well. I had to rent this one we did well on, this one I had to evict on. So, lot of little lessons right there. But then somehow from that period of time, and I know it wasn't a short period, it's a 15-year overnight success, but you jumped and you did 450. We're over 200. And I'll be honest with you, God bless anybody that can do that, because I can't believe we made it through it, and you doubled what we've done. So I got to hear how you did this. So tell me a little bit about that. And then in the mix, I always love to hear about your obstacles. What obstacles did you hit? Did you ever fall on your face? I mean, were you like crushing it and then all of a sudden something happened and you fell on your face? Like, anything you can tell the audience about like that journey?
Yeah. So after we did those handful of flips kind of pre-recession, all I was really doing was going around and to these condo conversions and bringing in people I knew, and we first in, first out type scenario, make money. And that was going smooth, but there was no cash flow on that. And honestly, I didn't know really what cash flow was till the market crashed. I remember pitching some of these condo conversions to investors that know what they're doing. And I say, all you got to do is carry $100 a month and we'll sell it and we'll make 20 grand. And they basically looked at me and had a couple swear words, and that kind of summed up to, you're crazy. But market crashed. I took a client to an auction. It was a real on-site auction. And I went because I wanted to see what a real life auction looked like. And ultimately, that day, that my client of mine, so I wasn't even going to go. And it's kind of where it all started that day. And he bought 3 properties that day for $75,000. So this was Market just crashed. So this is Lehman Brothers collapsed a couple months prior and went to this auction, and he bought 3 units for $75,000. And I went with him that afternoon to one of them, and the place was all stripped out, and it was in a little rougher part of Chicago, but the place was all stripped out. No electrical, no lighting, no copper, and he bought for like $25,000. And I'm like, as a real estate agent standing there with him, I thought I sold him crap, and I thought I almost like felt bad. And he's like, "This is great. Can you see if there's anything else on the block?" And I kind of said to him, I said, Are you serious? Like, really? He's like, yeah, no. He did like the summary of, put 4,000 for this, 5,000 for this, 6,000 will be all in, 52,000, and we'll rent it for 1,200. I said, wow. So I shot home that night and broke out the Excel spreadsheet, ran my numbers. I'm like, wow, this is what cash flow is.
That's
and
for sure.
I took that client and with my partner, and we teamed up, and we did. So the client that I took to the auction that day, he ended up being our money person. He didn't have the ambition to be the boots on the ground or the street person. And me and my partner, Brian, did call it 95% of everything. And we did about 240 units with him. We got approached at that time we originally said, that we were going to outsource the property manager for that. It's a little further from our main office where we were doing property management already, and we weren't familiar with the South Side of Chicago. So we said we're going to outsource it. We couldn't find any property manager that could outsource it too. So we then took that time and that experience to learn how to manage in C&D class neighborhoods. And we got really good at it, and we're still really good at it. But we're doing all that, and we took on the management, and we're filling these units up. And I think one of the mistakes that we did early on was, so we were very careless in our budgets and all that stuff, because there's so much room to mess up back then. And I think the first 30 properties, we probably didn't even put solid budgets down on paper. Or we never looked back to reflect where we went, why we went over that back of the napkin type budget. So knowing what we do today compared to what we do back then, like I have a heart attack thinking about kind of like how unorganized and how much money we wasted back then, and the opportunity we wasted, because it turned into being, we found ourselves almost getting, we took on a couple of other random partners, and the way we had people buy it. So bringing partners in, separate even from the 3 partners that we had, then got messy because we weren't able to leverage those properties. So the one thing we ran into is we became leveraged on some properties and unleveraged on other properties, which forced us with struggles when it came to what we were doing was kind of the BRRRR model back then. We just thought, hey, this partner will come in, they'll give us this much money. And this partner wants to come in and you give this much money. And it just made things a mess for us, as instead of now, just kind of keep your partnership, your couple partners, and do everything kind of within you guys. And so too many partners and too many different partnerships was probably one of our biggest downfalls in that first block of properties that we did. And it messed up our leverage all over, where we were almost over leveraged on some properties. We had free and clear properties on other ones. So it was a mess.
Yes, that definitely, you almost hit the proverbial financial wall in that kind of a situation where you've got it, and then over here you can't access it.
It's exactly, yeah. So we it was 100% that we hit a wall, and then we had the opportunity. We were approached by a local fund that wanted to do exactly what we were doing, but a couple $1 million worth, or raise $5 million, and we would act in every capacity that we did. And we would then get a piece of it. And in the process of this, so this would be 2013. So we've been doing it for 4 years, right? And in the process of going through the stacks and stacks of legal documents, I realized that we had no clue what we were doing, even at that point. They wanted to hold us to deadlines and budgets and rental pricing, and we were going to be able to find X amount of units. And like, man, we cannot do this. So ultimately, I told my 2 partners that I don't want to do this. And my one partner's like, all right, and he's all in and to being out. And that right there was like, man, I don't even have to convince you on getting out of this. And he's all in, he's out. And then our third partner, he the one that was not the boots on the ground, ultimately, he's like, well, can I do it? And I'm like, man, God bless, go for it. And that ended our partnership right there, because he went off and did that. And me and Brian at that point, so it was, by the time we wrapped up, we ran into the issue. What I was going for there is we ran into the issue of being all messed up with our leverage and how we were kind of financially screwed up. We ran into the wall of trying to split up the partnership. So we're almost playing monopoly with these properties. You take this one, you take that one, and this got this many loans on it, and this doesn't have any loans. So it became really, really messy. And the other part of that if anyone's listening, when you're doing partnerships, figure out all that stuff in the beginning.
You can swear. That's all right.
Plan for your divorce up front, because that's when everyone's happy and talking to each other. And some things got sticky there, and we were up against the wall, and it was a very stressful time of my life trying to separate from this third partner that his focus was going to do something else. And last thing he cared about was unwinding our relationship. So, but yeah, operating agreements and understanding, what happens if this doesn't work out, or just someone just wants to go do something else, what that looks like. And so that's a key takeaway that I learned from that.
Yeah, I think that's a huge takeaway, because that takeaway can be spun a lot of different ways. You were talking about plan your exit with, a potential partner before you sign the paperwork. Get the operating agreements, understand if we need to unwind this, what's it going to look like, and what's the consequences and the money piece of it. You need to figure that stuff out before you just dive right in, because you're so excited and like you guys are going to change the world, So I think that's a huge takeaway. But also with your real estate deals, I think that's a huge segue you can make, where you're planning your exit, for a partnership, not because you ever want that to happen, but if it does, you want to be ready. Same thing with a piece of real estate. When you buy a piece of real estate, you should always have your exit strategies planned out. If it doesn't work right, are you prepared and willing to rent it out? If it doesn't work out, are you prepared to take a loss if you have to sell it? And if you're in a partnership and you guys can't figure out which way to go, one wants to rent, one wants to sell, who's the deciding factor after that? So not only in the partnerships, but also in the deals, just always think of it as an exit. You've got to have multiple exits on everything. And that's kind of what you just said.
Yeah. One more thing on the partnership part was we didn't. Another crucial thing for partnerships I've learned. I'm a partnership person. I like partnerships. I don't like owning the whole process, and I like to be able to lean on people. Sometimes yin and yang. Some people are stronger than others at certain points in the night or days. So one thing is understanding the roles. My partnership I was just referencing was. There came animosity because that third partner, when we didn't need the money piece of it anymore, still had a large percentage of ownership, but didn't do anything. And that made us pissed. And it really made us resent him. So understanding the roles throughout of the partners throughout the life of the partnership is probably another crucial takeaway that we have always had in place ever since.
Yeah, that's an important thing. That really is. I mean, whether you're partnerships or not, but I mean, I see that just with all the people that, come through our facility at our events and everything, we see a lot of partnerships, and, you hear through the grapevine, sometimes there's some tension. So you gotta go through and plan that stuff out before you get into it. So with that being said, we talked a little bit about some of the external obstacles. We kind of hit in on a little bit of the internal obstacles, but let's just take and let's spotlight those two things. Let's talk about what during this journey of, from where you were with that first deal that was funded with your 401k loan to where you're at now, what would you say the single biggest internal obstacle that you had to face was? Was it fear, hesitation, lack of confidence? I mean, what do you think your biggest obstacle was with yourself?
So partially, my obstacle to chase opportunity was probably one of the things where in that time when we had that first partnership, we were trying to open another brokerage office. We were trying to do this. We were chasing too many golden nuggets that none of them were becoming good opportunities because none of the attention or focus was on them. So keeping focus was probably one of my biggest downfalls, or our partnership's biggest downfalls. And then at the same time, not understanding how to scale a business and maybe even just run a business. It's very simple when it's maybe just me and my partner, but when we had to bring a third person in or a fourth person, and be able to transfer that information and then and have them do it or bring the right person in. So scaling was probably the other huge obstacle in the sense of managing people. I mean, I never realized how much I don't like or am not good at managing people till we were in the heat of it. We had 9, 10, 12 people that we had to figure out who's going to manage them. So, keeping focused and understanding how to run a business, those two things.
You know, a big thing with a lot of people in real estate now, whether they're new or, you know, kind of in the first, I'll call it 5 years, is that shiny object syndrome. There's so many things out there, and your social media, we live in an information world, you know, ooh, this piece of candy, ooh, this piece of candy, you know, it's just like we grab that one and we put a little time there. Ooh, I want to try that. I want to, you know, little time in that. And eventually you got this big pile of shiny objects, and all of a sudden you're not doing anything well. Because you got to focus more on verticals. You got to go deeper into 1 or 2 of those and just go as deep as you can. And then the lack of knowledge, you know, with you, it was scaling, you know, the ability to scale. And how do you do that? And, you know, misinformation, because I think a big thing that we also suffer with in the information world is we have so much knowledge free and at our disposal at any given time. But the thing that I think a lot of people make the mistake of is misinformation, or what I like to call conventional knowledge of what everybody wants you to know, when sometimes the answer is literally right in front of your face. You just got to turn a little bit and look at it because it's right there. And that's the knowledge you need to really build your business. So those are internal obstacles. What about an external obstacle? The financing, sourcing. We talked a little bit about, you know, you had the fund, you had your 401k, but what would be one external obstacle that you ran into?
We were trying to do the BRRRR model. So we got into the whole, buying in 2008 to just compile hundreds of rental properties that we would own and keep long term. That was our mindset. And going through the BRRRR strategy, we would do 5, 10 properties, take it to a community bank, or there's a couple other ones that will do package type loans locally. We were finding that we weren't able to get 100% of our money out of every deal. So we ended up you know, we're averaging about 92, 93%. And on millions of dollars of real estate, that added up to a lot of money that we had to bring to the table and fill a gap on that. So that was a challenge. And the thing is, we tried to continually find that money and pump into it. Even we kind of take our own internal second loans from somebody at like 8% or something like that. And what we came to realize was, hey, if we just sell 1 or 2 out of every 10 we do, that's our fill right there. And that kind of came at a moment when the whole turnkey model was popping up all around the country, mostly the Midwest here. And we started to present ourselves. And we looked around it. We researched the whole turnkey model, and we saw right away. We're like, all right, we have better product. We're buying in better blocks, of better neighborhoods. And we have the property management, which I think the property management, when your buyer is buying something turnkey, there's nothing. You can have a crappy house with a crappy tenant, and the property manager will get you out of that problem and get you back stabilized. But if you have the crappy building, crappy tenant, and a crappy property manager, you're done. And you're calling me and hiring us to bail you out, which is what we did a lot the last few years. But we researched this turnkey model. We said, you know what, these guys are selling 400 or 500. You know, if we sell 2 out of every 10, you know, that's great. We had the product because we've been kind of stockpiling it since 2008. And our first buyer came along, found us on our newly formed website, and he bought 27 units. Right out the gate, I'm like, whoa. And then it's like, wow, you know, you get a taste of kind of what the flipping or what that cash flow coming back in does. It's a different story come tax time, but we saw that, and we got a piece of that. And we realized we might have been on something. So we kind of shifted. Instead of doing 2 of every 10, we kind of moved to 7 of every 10. And the pricing was going up, and the demand for quality product was going up. And quality providers. So it just time-wise, we ended up selling a lot of what we had, and a lot of what we were doing at the time. So.
Wow, Mark, that was awesome because that's something we all face, and nobody's talking about what you just talked about right there. The BRRRR model works; it works phenomenal, and if you follow your model, your max offer model, and you buy it for the right price, it's always going to work. But sometimes you just pay a little bit too much, or sometimes you just put a little bit too much into the property. You're not paying attention to those budgets, and like you said, it doesn't seem like a lot in the moment. You're like, well, we're over by a little. We're over $5,000. We're over $10,000. Times 5 properties, times 10 properties, times 20 properties. Now you're talking about $100,000+ that just has to magically appear because that little error compounded by the number of units turns into a massive problem. We've faced it as well. And you know what? We've had to do exactly what you did, but we didn't come up with that model where like every 10 you sell one, because that's great. That's such an awesome formula, and you should do something with that because that will answer a lot of questions for people, because it's going to happen. I don't care how good you are at buying, you're going to go over in one way or the other, and you're going to hit that wall where you're going to be like, wow, I did the refi and it was supposed to work, but now I got to come up with $5,000 here. Okay, the next one, I got to come up with $10,000 here. And you might be able to front load those few out of your own pocket, but that's your operating capital, and eventually you're cash poor, asset rich. So, what's the answer? Is it borrowing money from, other people and doing private lending? Well, there goes all your profit. So I think what you just said, and that's the first time I've heard it, is awesome. And you really should kind of put that on paper and start telling people about that more, because that's a real problem that a lot of people are either going to face or are already facing. So thank you for bringing that up.
There's one more piece to that. So you just spoke of the two controllable parts. The part that we couldn't control was how much the appraiser appraised it for. That was a piece that was totally out of our and even today from '08, these appraisers are still uber conservative than they were prior to the crash. So those three elements, overspending or they're missing something, or the appraisal, are all killers in the BRRRR model. That's what puts you out.
Because the BRRRR model is such an unbelievable model. We talk about it. Actually, I'm doing a RIA tonight where I'm teaching all about the BRRRR model. I love it. But you're right. There are some hidden things that you need to understand can happen and probably will if you go deeper into that model. So you just nailed them right on the head. You're like, psh, wake up. It's not perfect. And there is no such thing as perfect, is there? There's no perfect thing in real estate. Yeah. So with that being said, and we're just getting close to wrapping this thing, but what is the biggest thing personally and how you've transformed? Like, what's the biggest thing in your life that real estate has done to transform you?
So getting back to earlier, it just gives me a little more options. I became, so what I like to do, I like to give back. And I think that makes me feel good personally. I like to jump on a podcast with someone like you and tell everybody everything I messed up, so I can save other people from making those mistakes. I did a lot of naive things or close your eyes and throw the cards up and hope for the best type things. And I learned a lot of lessons for it, paid a lot of money out of my pocket for it. So real estate has given me the opportunity to have a platform where I can teach other people what not to do. So it's a big thing for me. And, it's helped us build a brand. It complements our property management side of things and gives us some sort of, hey, we're good property managers because we're investors, and we're investors because we're property managers. So it kind of flows back and forth. But it's kind of given me the platform to really help other investors.
Yeah, that's great. Mark, this has been awesome hearing your story, and I love it. And some serious golden nuggets. So our audience is going to be walking away from this one motivated with some knowledge that they either need today or they're going to need. So I think this has been great. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you, how do they go about finding you? I mean, what's the best thing, best place for them to go?
Well, I'll give you a funding place you can come. So I don't do too much on Facebook. We have our page out there, but on our website, I have taken over the manning of the live chat. I don't always respond live, but I have fun corresponding with people back and forth. And so anyone that wants to go on our website, gcrealtyinc.com, click on the live chat. It'll go right to my cell phone. So I can always get back to you right away, but within a couple hours, you close out, it sends me an email with your email and I'll have your information.
All right, that's great. So all of you that are watching this right now or listening to this right now, make sure you check out his website. And not only that, I know on his website, he's got some great photos of some of their projects that they do, so you can kind of get a better picture of this empire that Mark's built. So thank you all again for joining us for the Real Estate Money School. And again, you are all either at one point or another in your real estate journey and in your journey to becoming a rebel banker. So you always have to take that leap. It's the most important thing. There's only two ways to success: take action and get the proper information and guidance to get there. So take action right now. Get started. Start with a copy of the book, The Private Money Guide. That'll teach you all about money and how to find it, how to get all the money for all the deals you'll ever do. And check me out on the website at chrisnoggle.com and also themoneymultiplier.com. So thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Real Estate Money School. We'll see you on the next one. And Mark, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're very welcome.